This is Raising Teens with psychologist and teacher Collett Smart. I'm Ben McEachern. Collett, great to be with you again.
Yes, as always.
Now, Collett, it is so good that we're being welcomed into people's families all over the place as you're helping people to raise their teens. If you know of someone that could really benefit from Collett's wisdom and advice and research, be sure to share Raising Teens podcast with them. Today, we are talking about a topic that must be a burning issue in so many houses. Collett, when do you buy a teen a phone? Because Malad has sent us a question, and it goes a little bit like this, Collett. My daughter is going to high school next year. Many of her friends already have phones. She says she absolutely needs a phone for high school, and I'm unfair if I don't let her get one. I want to keep my child safe, but I also don't want to be unreasonable. Is there a recommended age for getting a teen a phone? Is there a good age for when a teen should have a phone, Collett?
So this is the million-dollar question. I get asked this all the time. And my own son, he's my youngest, so he's 13, and he was nagging me in primary school. And in our family, it was usually a high school privilege. But I'm also very careful to say that it also is going to depend on circumstances. So he went to school with his older siblings, so he didn't need a phone, catching public transport and so on. So I don't think it's necessary for primary age children to have a phone, but again, some parents would consider factors like, their child has a long bus ride and so on. But for some people, it might coincide with a time that your child is moving to high school and you feel like it's a privilege that they earn. And for some people, it might not just be age, it also might be maturity. So you might have a child who can't even look after their school jumper and they're onto their third school jumper or, fifth lunchbox or whatever, and you think, I don't know how safe this phone's going to be. I'm being light, but really it is about maturity, and it's also thinking about how your child is going to respond when you set up boundaries around technology use at home. Are they going to be wanting to text in class and so on? Those are also issues that you've got to look at. Schools have their own rules around that. And, will they adhere to technology apps? And so those are all things the conversations we've got to have about using videos, video calls, text, social media. And so I think it's, the general sense of responsibility, but also being aware that some of our children have had laptops or iPads already. And so some of these conversations we have already been having. So it's not a cut and dried, easy answer. And also for some parents, they might not be ready. And so it's also all right to say, no, not yet.
Does it just make things way simpler, Collett, if you just cut out the smartphone issue and go for an old school dumb phone? Just a phone that doesn't really do anything apart from ring people. Remember those ones that you could just phone people on? What about just getting your kid? I think they still exist, right?
Yes,
I know. You could get a quote unquote dumb phone. Doesn't that just make things easier?
Yeah, I used to love my little flip top phone.
Yeah.
I loved it. It was pink. I loved it. But if I think about, I used to say, when this question was asked, I used to say, absolutely yes, dumb phones. But I've actually changed my mind.
Like dumb phones all the way? Is that what you were arguing for before? Oh, but you've changed.
I've changed my mind.
Oh.
And I think because, so maybe for primary age children where you just want them to be able to, call you, but I don't know, even then, I'm thinking, So the trick is, or the tricky part is that your smartphones, then suddenly your children have access to social media apps and so on, and far too much YouTube and data. But, and also I should just say, children under 13 shouldn't be having social media in the first place. But I feel like with smartphones, there are all these apps and abilities in terms of things that I use and have used in my parenting now, where we can add apps for safety, tracking apps, not to stalk your child, but even your primary age child or your 12-year-old or your early high school child, it's helpful to kind of know where they're at. Did they make it on the bus? It's been helpful for my kids to track where I'm at, when I say I'm on my way, and they can see on Find My Friends where I am.
Yes, yeah. My parents didn't know where I was when I was riding my BMX around with my brother all day on a Saturday.
Yeah.
But now you can actually know for purposes of wanting to know your kids are safe.
Yeah. And so look, there's pluses and minuses to that. I think kids need independence, but with social media, I think in some ways there's too much independence that they're not ready for in terms of the content they can access. And that is why I love that smartphones that have these, you can upload certain apps that, include a VPN and all sorts of things that can block content. Even your older iPhones, you can have, in family sharing, there's all these capabilities where you can lock your child out for certain times of the day. So as my children have got older, clearly my young adults don't have that anymore, but when my kids are at high school, their phone shuts down at certain times of night and only wakes up at certain times of the day, which you can't do on a dumb phone. We use something called Family Zone. I have no shares or anything in Family Zone. I just think it's one of the best devices out there.
What is that?
So that's actually added to your router at home, but it acts as a form of Wi-Fi. But your Wi-Fi is kind of filtered through Family Zone, and you can actually set up different age limits or different profiles in your home.
Right.
So my youngest son has different times that his devices switch off compared to, say, when my other two were at high school. You block certain content according to age, certain apps. So that is why I don't say dumb phones only anymore, because I think there's a lot we can do now with smartphones that you can't do with a dumb phone.
Yeah, so sort of circling back to the initial question of when you should buy a teen, and you've touched on some of the safety issues, which to me sound a bit like there's pros and cons,
Yes.
right? So summing it all up then, you're still saying that depending on where your child is at, where they're going, what's going on in their life, getting them a phone as a teen is not necessarily a bad thing.
No, and I also think this is part of their generation, and I do think that there is a connection that they have with their friends in terms of being online on social media and so on. If they're over 13, there are things that they talk about with their friends that they've seen on Snapchat or TikTok or whatever it might be. When my son turned 13, we actually really staggered his introduction to certain social media. We just didn't do it all at once. And you start off with contracts, and you start off what the boundaries are that they have to agree on, and really talking about issues like pornography and so on. We've spoken about that on the podcast before, so people can go back and listen to that podcast. There's also content on my raisingteenagers.com.au website. My blog has a whole section on how to talk to children about pornography and young people about pornography. Those are vital conversations before we hand over the phone. So it's not just hand over the phone because they're now a teenager. There's a whole lot that happens before that, and then it doesn't stop. I think we don't just have one conversation and think now our children are safe. They are ongoing conversations, and checking in, spot checks on phones, those are what our children should know they need to do before they earn the right to have a phone.
Thanks a lot, Malad, for sending in your question about when should teens have a phone. If you've got a question for Collett, you can send us a voice message at the Hope Media app. Find the Raising Teens podcast page, or if you'd rather just type it out, you can go to hopepodcast.com.au, find the Raising Teens page, send us your question, and Collett will get back to you in a future episode. This has been Raising Teens.